Hello and welcome back. So today's class, what we're going to be talking about is using text analytics with Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services. I think this is one of those really cool, one of those sexy, one of those awesome pieces of technology that nobody cares about. Nobody cares about. Talk about Bitcoin, Eli. Talk about blockchain. Talk about bezel sizes. That's what a lot of folks want to hear about. But sadly, there's a lot of this really cool technology out there that, nobody actually really wants to learn, right? So what's really cool about text analytics is basically what text analytics allows you to do is it allows you to use the Microsoft Serverless Architecture to take a look at text and then essentially try to parse that text to suss out what might be valuable information for you. So I have an app running in the background. It might be a little hard for you to see up there. But basically what is happening right now is I'm using Azure's Speech.txt services to basically have my computer, I have a little MacBook Pro down here, right? So this computer, as I'm talking, it's using the Speech.txt services to turn my speech into text. Then once the speech is in text, we're using the text analytics services to try to find out my positivity score for that text. How happy or sad am I in the text? And then what I'm doing is I'm using a basic PHP script to grab that value that's been given by the text analytics service, to grab the text that was actually analyzed, and then based upon the value, we will write out the text with a background of a certain color. So basically, if the positivity score is above 0.8, so I'm pretty positive, we get this dark green color. If it's between 0.6 to 0.8, we get this light green color. If it's 0.4 to 0.6, we get a yellow color. If it is, there we go. If it is 0.2 to 0.4, we get an orange color we haven't seen yet. And then if it's under 0.2 to 0, we get the red color, right? And so this is just a very crude, to be clear, I hacked this thing together in about an hour. For my coding skills, I hacked this thing together in about an hour. So it's a bit quirky and it's a bit funky. But what I'm trying to show you here is how you can take text, try to suss out some kind of value from that text that might be useful to you, to your customer service agents, that type of thing, and then be able to present that information in something that might be a little bit more user-friendly, right? So if I'm using this particular script and I'm having a conversation, let's say I'm on a telephone call and the conversation is going back and forth, this is just kind of an easy way to get an idea of how that conversation is going, right? If this whole dashboard is full of red, the customer's probably not happy. If the dashboard is bouncing between all these different colors, right, I can see, okay, this conversation is going pretty decently. The other thing to be thinking about is, do remember, with this, I'm simply using CSS with the if-else statement in PHP to give the color. In the same type of if-else statement, I could also be dumping this information into a database, right? I want to know when there are sentences where people are irritated so that I can try to figure out what the problem is, right? So instead of being just simply red here, what if this gets dumped into a database and then I can query the database? So I can see who is a customer service agent, I can see who they were talking to, I can see the time of day, I can see a whole bunch of other information, and then I can see the communication that was flagged for potential problems, and then I can try, as a manager, I can try to determine if there's any way to try to solve those types of problems. So anyways, this is awesome. This is so cool. And I know I'm probably gonna have 5 people watching this particular video. But anyways, that's the real thing with being a technology geek. Even when you actually do get really, really cool stuff, a lot of times people are like, yeah, but what's the bezel size though? But Eli, the important thing is, what is the bezel size? Okay, there we go. We killed that particular script. So this kind of gives you an idea of what we are going into today with the presentation for text analytics. Again, when I'm doing these classes, I initially did this class last night to my in-house audience. So I have people that come to Silicon Dojo, and they came and we did this class last night. So during the class that I'm recording now, I'll just throw in little things that I learned from last night's presentation, where there was good things and where there was problems. Now, one of the good things that I found, if you're going to be doing your own Silicon Dojo, is I picked up this little HDMI switcher with a nice little remote control in order to flip between multiple computers, right? So I have my demonstration computer here, and I have basically my PowerPoint computer here, and in other classes I'll have even more devices. One of the problems I ran into just simply trying to use the input command on the remote control, it was very slow, it was very clunky, it was a pain in the butt. So I went out, I went to Best Buy. Don't sue me. I went to Best Buy, bought this thing for like $80 or whatever with a nice little remote control. And what's cool here is I can then, it just has 1, 2, 3, or 4, so I can know which computer is on which HDMI thing. And then I can just click on the button, and then it will flip over to the computer that I want to look at. It takes a couple of seconds. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but I do actually find this system to be a hell of a lot easier than trying to flip around with the input button. It might depend on the particular TV that you're using. Again, this Hisense TV, I absolutely love this Hisense TV. 65-inch Hisense TV for like $530 or whatever, but at least for the input thing, that can be a bit of a pain in the butt. So if you're going to be doing Silicon Dojo, something to think about there. One of the other things I've started to do with Silicon Dojo, something that you may want to do with your particular Silicon Dojo, is I'm just running through like opening notes. So we have the class here, and then right before that I started running through opening notes. Some things for you to understand at home that might be valuable for you is we are moving to our new office. Actually, after I do this video, I'm literally recording this video and then I'm moving all this stuff over to the new office. We're finally upgrading. Finally, after 3 whole months, we're upgrading to like a 500 to 600 square foot office so we can start doing open labs, that type of thing. So that will be very exciting. If you're at home, one of the values for this is it has carpet, so it won't be nearly as echoey, and it's also on the other side of the building, so you won't hear fire trucks, you won't hear buskers, you won't hear a lot of that ambient noise you currently get. So that's just something for you folks to know at home. We are getting our first sponsor, very excited about that, going through the final things for our sponsor. Why that's really cool is because you know, when organizations or companies start giving you money, that means funding becomes a hell of a lot easier, so we're very excited about that. And one of the things I was talking about with my folks last night is our COVID policy. So I'm currently doing this in 2021, which means, you know, the whole COVID thing is probably going to still be appropriate going into 2024. I honestly believe COVID will not be behind us until 2024. I think the end of COVID will be about the point that I start caring about 5G. That's just my personal opinion. If you look at the science, if you look at all the countries that aren't vaccinated, because right now in the United States there's this whole issue about Americans aren't getting vaccinated, but there are entire countries in the world that haven't even gotten their first doses of vaccine. Australia only has like 13 or 15% of their population vaccinated, the whole 9 yards. So one thing to be thinking about if you're doing your own Silicon Dojo is you do kind of sort of need to figure out what your particular COVID policy is. I am not telling you what your COVID policy should be, but this is something that you need to be thinking about. Again, when I rented this space, when I'm renting that space, I am thinking about how COVID, will deal, how it will interact with the Silicon Dojo that I'm trying to create. So this is something that you should just consider and try to figure out what your COVID policy is. Just so you know, if you come to here to Silicon Dojo in Asheville, the COVID policy is, I'm vaccinated, my wife's vaccinated. The science says if you're vaccinated, you're pretty good. So basically, that's it, right? If I have a mask on for 2 hours, an hour or two, I'm just not simply going to be able to do these classes. I cannot talk. I cannot do these seminars in a mask for an hour or two. That's nothing about the science. I would just gag on it. So I can't wear the masks and still do these classes. And so basically what I've told my people is, hey, the efficacy of the vaccine looks pretty good. You might want to get the vaccine. And regardless, my wife and I are vaccinated, and so yeah, we're probably not going to die from it. So that's kind of what our policy is here. If Asheville changes, so Asheville currently doesn't have a mask mandate. If they have a mask mandate, we will abide by the mask mandate. Again, with Silicon Dojo, I'm not in the mood to be arguing with a whole bunch of people, so we will do that, but you know, we'll see what happens. But this is something, if you're going to be doing Silicon Dojo, or if you have a business organization, this is something that you need to be thinking about. So anyways, let's get into the exciting class for all three of you that are still left. So text analytics with Azure. So again, this is really, really cool, especially in the modern world, because in the modern world, everything can be turned into text, right? Machine vision is hard. Machine speech and speech recognition is hard. Text is easy. Text is easy, right? Every 9-year-old who learns how to code understands how to create a string and then how to do if-else conditionals based off of that string, right? Once you can turn voice into a string, once you can turn a picture image into a string, then it's very easy to parse against, right? And this is the third class I've done on Azure Cognitive Services. We have a previous class on machine vision, basically using the Azure computer vision. With that, you can use something called optical character recognition. So you can take a picture of something with words in it, and then basically Azure Services will present what the words are. So, right, you have a picture. You're trying to figure out what to do with a picture is difficult. You send that picture to Azure Cognitive Services. Azure Cognitive Services then sends back all the text in the picture. Now you can then parse the text. And when you parse the text, obviously you can do text analytics. You can look for specific things. Again, I also did a class on computer speech. So basically what I was showing you with that particular demonstration, where Azure Services, we're turning my speech into text, and then once it's turned into text, then you can analyze that text however you want. You can look for positivity values. You can get named entities. You can get personally identifiable information. A lot of the other things that we're going to be talking about today. So when I talk about text analytics, this is one of those people like people like eyes glaze over, like text analytics. Who cares? It's like, well, you should. Because again, this is one of those big things in technology, right? It's that whole, like, everybody focuses on the machine vision. They don't really think about, okay, well, what happens when you get the JSON response? What happens when the text comes back? Then what do you do with it? What you do with it is use something like text analytics. Warning bias. I'm going to start putting these warning biases in my classes because I think it's actually a useful thing with a teacher. Do realize with whatever any instructor that you're going to be learning from, they all have their own biases. They're all going to be teaching classes based off of what those biases are, based off of what their worldview, their lived experiences are, right? Some people are going to teach one way, some people are going to teach another. Just so we are all clear, I come from the bias of being a boss. Again, one of the proudest days of my life and one of the most horrifying days of my life is going to be when I actually start hiring people for Silicon Dojo. I will be so excited that Silicon Dojo will be successful enough that I am able to hire people, and I will be horrified because I will have to hire people. That's a boss joke right there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you ain't been a boss. Anyway, so when I'm looking at these kind of services, I am looking at this as an organizational leader from that boss perspective. One of the other things, one of my biases is there's a gas station called Sheetz. So kind of like in the mid-northeast in the U.S., so Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, those types of places, there's a gas station chain called Sheetz. I've been literally going to Sheetz for like 30 years. Like as long as I've been driving, basically, I've been going to Sheetz. Many years ago, something like 20 years ago probably at this point, they added these little kiosks. So when you go in, right, they have gas, plus they have food, plus they have coffee. So a long time ago, long time, but way before McDonald's, way before Southwest, way before the argument about $15 an hour minimum wage, right? They actually added these little kiosks. So you just walk up, they've got 4 kiosks in every Sheetz. You go in, you plug what you want, you customize it to high hell and back, and about 4 minutes later, they shove a sandwich or whatever it is you ordered, over the counter. And so one of my biases is I absolutely love this. Again, long before the argument about $15 an hour minimum wage. Again, I don't even know when they put in these kiosks. Long time ago. It's been so long, I don't even remember when you actually had to order from a human being. And so that's one of my biases too. I do like these automated systems that I think improve service for the end user. As I said before, it's all text. Again, optical character recognition. Whether you have an iPhone, you can take a picture. If you just have images, whatever else, you can run that through what is called OCR, optical character recognition. It can pull out the text. Once you pulled out the text, it's now text. You can now analyze it. Again, from microphones, from WAV files, from any other kind of audio type file, you can take the audio, you can turn it into text. Once it's text, you can analyze it. So a big thing to be thinking about is at the end of the day, it's all text. And what's kind of cool about these types of services, like with text analytics, is if you start creating a back-end infrastructure to deal with text, then as new products come down the pike, again, you don't really care about what the product is. You don't care if it's from Microsoft or Google or AWS or Linode or some new company, right? If they just provide you text and you have a system to deal with text, it really doesn't matter who you're using and what you're using and that type of thing. So it becomes very interesting. And if you start thinking about it's all text, and then how would you deal with text for whatever solution you're trying to create, I think you'll see a lot of exciting possibilities. One of the things that I really believe in is the idea of building institutional relationships. Again, this is one of my little biases from running around the world, lived experience as they call it, is that one of the big problems I see in the modern world is we have these large corporations. And the weird thing is that we as people have a form of relationship with these large corporations. But a large corporation, as an institution, does not have a relationship with us. If I go to a Starbucks, the individual barista may know me, but Starbucks doesn't really know me. I brought this up in other classes because I think this is an interesting thing to be thinking about for the next 10 years. Again, I've traveled all over the world. I like Starbucks. Whatever. Not going there. I like Starbucks. I started drinking Starbucks a long time ago when I was a youngin', when I was as young as many of my students now are, and I just keep drinking Starbucks. I've drinking Starbucks all across the country. I've drinking Starbucks all across Europe. I've drinking Starbucks in Bangkok and the whole 9 yards. When I see a Starbucks and I want a coffee, I go to Starbucks. One of the interesting things that I found is Starbucks are different around the world. Some places have small differences and other places have large differences. So if you go to Amsterdam, they sell stroop waffles, which we don't have in the US, don't really have anywhere else. Awesome, very addictive. It's like potato chips, only sugary and caramelly and probably even worse for your health. Or if you go, at least back in the day when I went to London, it was really interesting. I went to London and I went to a Starbucks and I asked for a coffee. So I'm as an American, I go to an American company, coffee company, and I ask for a coffee. And they look at me and say, "Yes, sir, would you like a black coffee or a white coffee?" And I was just sitting there like, I have not had my coffee today yet, so I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to answer this. But people do coffee. Even Starbucks does coffee differently all around the world. And one of the things that I find interesting is Starbucks itself has no relationship with me to try to explain things to me or to provide something that I may prefer. Like I did not used to know what an Americano is. So when I go and travel internationally now, I simply order Americanos. Americanos are espresso with hot water. At the end of the day, it kind of sort of tastes like a drip coffee. Closest thing to drip coffee that you're going to get. Here's the thing, in a lot of places in the world, they literally do not have drip coffee. If I walk in and I ask for a drip coffee and they ask me whatever, the problem is we run into a weird issue. Wouldn't it be nice if Starbucks, right, knew that I was an American that bought a lot of coffee from their American stores, so when I walked in and asked for a drip coffee, what if it was analyzing my text with machine vision, basically knew who I was, and could say, oh, this is an American, what he's looking for is most likely an Americano, explain what an Americano is to him. That could save a lot of problems. An institutional relationship with the customer. Again, with that whole thing with stroop waffles. My wife became addicted to stroop waffles. I mean, it's just, it's European, so of course it's good for your health. Not sure how all that butter and salt and sugar and caramel and white flour is good for your health, but it's European, so you know it is. Anyway, she got really addicted to stroopwafels. One of the things I thought that was interesting, though, is like when we first went to Starbucks and they sold stroopwafels, think about if they had known that we go to a lot of Starbucks, so this isn't just a one-off thing, and that hey, we're new, we've never been to an Amsterdam Starbucks, and simply offered a free stroopwafel, since you're new to the area. And then my wife would have nibbled on the stroopwafel, and then she would have bought a crap ton of stroopwafel from the Starbucks. And that's the kind of thing that you can start having when the institution itself, not simply the barista or the employees, when the institution itself has a relationship with the customer. Again, I think about this like when we start doing text analytics. If the institution knows that the customer is getting irritated, right? If I'm sitting here and I'm saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, whatever else, and I'm taking an order, and the system understands that the customer is getting frustrated for some reason, if the institution could simply pop up a little pop-up thing on the computer screen for the barista and say, offer the person a 50% off for the coffee today, or offer the person a free coffee for today. Now think about this, right? If you come in and you're kind of cranky and you're bitchy and everything's going bad, and then Starbucks just offers you a free coffee. Well, that's kind of nice. Wow, I didn't realize the world could actually still be nice out there, right? It's a very profound branding, bonding opportunity right there if the institution implements solutions that are able to do that type of thing. You know, I think about this with Tigger here. So right here, depending on your mindset, this is either one of the most adorable or one of the most dystopian pictures that you can ever look at, right? So we have a nice older woman here, and she is holding Tigger, and she's just got the brightest ass smile on her face. And this may be a model, but I've actually seen this in the real world. I don't know what it is with Disney characters. People absolutely love them. But look at this. She absolutely adores Tigger. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? Look, this woman is coming to Tigger and she's having the time of her life. Here's the interesting thing to think about this. There's a human being in that Tigger costume. She is excited. She is happy. She is having the time of her life being with Tigger. Intellectual property. She does not give one half of a crap about the human being within that Tigger costume. Again, they're very heartwarming and very dystopian. I will leave that for you folks to decide. But one of the things to be thinking about for organizations is, can we create more Tiggers? Can we Tiggerify essentially our workforce so people are having a very good, very beneficial experience with the people, and the people are getting the, whatever from the company in order to provide that better service. These are some of the things that I think about, which usually has people running away in horror. The next thing to be thinking about is employees. Again, when we start talking about things like text analytics, with text analytics, voice and video and images and all that can be turned into text. One of the big questions to ask as a manager or a boss is, when you see an employee, is that employee swimming or is that employee drowning? The problem is as a manager, it can be very difficult to understand and be able to actually, ascertain the difference between those two. And it can be even more difficult if you have a lot of other things going on. One of the things I think about when I see this picture and ask myself, is an employee swimming or drowning, is I had an employee years ago at this point, who started out as my best employee. Absolutely awesome. They came in, within 3 weeks, they sat down to learn Linux, had never touched Linux before in their life, sat down to learn Linux. Within 3 weeks or a month, I was actually able to send them out on a billable field call to one of our clients who was actually a technology client, dealt with database services. That employee did so well on their first job that the CEO of that company actually thanked me for sending me such a highly qualified technician. Absolutely amazing technician. I thought this was the type of person I was going to be able to build a foundation of my business on. Here's the thing. They also had a life outside of business. There was girlfriends, whatever that is, but then there was a parental figure that came in. And I noticed there was weird things, but I had many other employees. I had vendors to deal with, I had customers to deal with, and I kind of thought that they were able to handle their stuff. Unfortunately, they weren't. They were a freaking disaster because they were field technicians. So like my in-house technicians, I can look over their shoulders and make sure what they're doing. A field technician, they go out, they spend hours and hours and hours out in the field. I don't really know at the end of the day what they're doing. All kinds of weird stuff came up, and basically at the end of the day, what I figured out is that they were dealing with so many of these external personal life issues. It was destroying their professional capacity. And if I had realized the problem when their efficiency had decreased by 10%, I could have tried to solve that problem. I could have brought them in earlier, I could have given them additional training, I could have gone out with them and had them assist me and then verify that they knew what they were doing. There could have been all those things, right? If I had any kind of warning signs that would actually be able to pop up and tell me, okay, this is something you should look at. Again, I had so much stuff going on, figured that they were dealing with their problems. The issue is that their efficiency decreased by 90%, cost me an absolute metric ton of money. Bad employees can cost you a lot of money. And so by the time I realized how bad their problems were, it was like, oh wow, I didn't realize how bad your issues are. I'm so sorry, you're fired. Because at that point, they had already cost me way too much money. And so one of the things to be thinking about, again, this brave new world we're dealing with, is asking yourself how you can create systems just to simply to kind of keep track of your employees' well-being. Again, we talk about this in the modern world. There's this phrase, speech is violence. Again, not going to get onto either side of the political statement on that one, but let's just look at it what it is, right? If somebody thinks speech is violence, when you say something, a microaggression, that is a form of violence. One of the things that we realize is that as a business owner in the United States, I am expected to provide a safe environment for my workforce. Well, if we start saying words are violence, there starts to become a lot of legal issues that go along with that, right? It's one thing for people to argue about microaggressions just in the normal societal philosophical sense. What is a microaggression? Should we care about microaggressions? All that, again, not going to get onto that. But what becomes very interesting is if we start going down the line that microaggressions are equivalent to violence, and if violence is putting employees into danger, that means allowing microaggressions to be in your professional environment is something that might be a liability. It might actually get you sued. So things like having text analytics in your environment, basically trying to analyze how communication is going between different employees, might be a way for you to better understand when you need to step in, when you may need to offer somebody a day off. Hey, like again, if you have text analytics and you're seeing somebody's speech, and normally they're at like a 60% for positivity, and all of a sudden they're at a 40% positivity for a couple of days. Just simply being able to go to them and say, hey, I'm just wondering, is everything going okay? Oh no, my dog, my father, my whatever else died. If you just step in there and you say, hey, why don't you take a couple of days off of work, paid days off of work, why don't you go and why don't you grieve for whatever you need to grieve for, right? Paying a few days worth of work out of the business expenses might save you a crap ton more money in the future. Let them process their issue, come back when they're feeling much more normal, and then they're less likely to scream at customers, peers, and the whole 9 yards. Again, looking at communication between people, looking at certain words, these types of things. This can give you a single pane of glass. This can give you a dashboard to better understand the environment that your employees and your customers are dealing with, and it may allow you to suss out certain information. So again, something that I find very exciting with things like text analytics. The final thing with text analytics is simply automating processes. Again, my wife has had cancer 3 times. She goes to the doctor like the way that I go to 7-Eleven. And one of the most ridiculous things in the world is she always has to refill out the same paperwork. You would think after a decade they would know what the hell her address is. But no, all these amazing database systems out there can correlate everything to hell and back. Amazon can figure out if you're going to be pregnant before you even have sex. Their systems are so good. And yet, if you go to the doctor's office, you're still going to have to fill out what the hell your address is. One of the cool things with text analytics, and what I'll show you today, is you can pull out information, things like personally identifiable information, one of the features you can do, and basically autofill components of things like forms. So imagine if you go to your doctor's office. When you come to your doctor's office, you scan your driver's license. Maybe it asks you a couple of questions, and then you simply answer those questions verbally, and then it spits out a laser printed form with a bunch of the fields that are already pre-filled out. And then you only have to plug in the specific things that you care about. Or when you call up to make an appointment with the doctor, and they say, okay, why do you need to come to the doctor today? You say why you need to come to the doctor. That gets turned into text, which essentially gets turned into the work order. Right? Again, when you go to the doctor, it's a work order for human beings. So if you have a work order for a human being, right? Okay, so we have this date slot with this person. We now turn what they said into text, so we can actually put that in the description of the problem. They then come in, scan their driver's license. We're able to pull out the relevant information there, autofill, and now instead of spending 30 minutes filling out all this paperwork for the 1,000th time, you can go through and you can simply check off the things that you actually care about. Things like just automating the process can be really, really incredibly valuable. And again, if you've dealt with the modern world, you will realize how little process automation there really is. One of the things that I find interesting when we start talking about text analytics, again, when we're talking about text analytics, we're really talking about communication analytics here, is that I'm an ASPE. What that means is I am on the autistic spectrum. Thankfully, I'm pretty high on the autistic spectrum, and what I actually care about is actually valuable in this world. One of the things that I feel very bad for is all the ASPEs out there that are hyper-focused on stamps. I know every stamp that's ever been created. You ask them about stamps, and they'll be able to answer anything in the world about stamps to you. I feel so bad for those people. They're just as smart as me. Just nobody gives a damn what they know. Right, one of the nice parts with me being being an ASPE is the things that I actually care about are relevant in the world of making money, technology and business and a lot of these other things. I'm hyper focused, just like that little stamp collector is. The thing is, people are actually willing to pay me for my services. But one of the big things to understand is an ASPE, as somebody on the spectrum, is essentially what happens when you're on the spectrum is you're just born without certain components, right? So the component that I was not born with is something called intuition. So somewhere along the lines of 90% of all human communication is actually non-verbal communication. You speak with tone of voice. You speak with your face. You speak with hand movements, right? All this stuff is speech. How my brain works is I just hear the speech. I literally hear the words coming out of your mouth. So if you're sitting there going, are you okay? Yeah, motherfucker, yeah, I'm completely fine. Oh, okay. What the fuck's wrong with you? Well, I asked you how you were. I was more than happy to help. You said you were fine. Yeah, anyways, right? So one of the interesting things that I found is being an ASPE and understanding that I have a profound issue with human communication. When I was younger, I realized that I had to deal with it. I did not get the option with how my lived experience was, my life was. I did not get the option to go hide away in a bedroom and play with Legos or whatever all day. I had to deal with humanity. And so that's one thing. If you ever listen to my more personal videos, I talk about that when I was 17 and 18, I used to go out to poetry readings, right? I was horrified getting up and speaking in front of anybody. I was horrified to speak to anybody. Like simply going up and saying hi was physically painful. The thing was, I realized that crap wasn't gonna work. If I didn't figure out a way to become comfortable with people, the rest of my life was going to be incredibly miserable. And so I learned how to communicate. I learned the process. I don't intuit. Because intuiting is subconscious, I actually consciously process a whole bunch of information coming through, and then, I figure out what I need to do from there. So when I'm with people, it's an incredibly exhausting experience. If I spend 2 hours at a meetup or something, I need 6 hours of downtime. If I go out and I'm actually with people for a day, it'll take 2 days. I just need to sit down in my little computer room, tip-tapping away on text analytics and being away from people, right? It's just one of those things things with being an ASPE. Why this comes up is what I find very interesting is because I have an issue with communication that is so profound that I cannot possibly ignore it. I notice how people who do not feel that they have a problem with communication many times have massive problems with communication, but they never have to be introspective about it, right? They are not so horrible at communication that it keeps ending in disaster. So, it keeps working out adequately for them. And so they think that they're doing well with communication. Again, especially being in the business world, you don't know how many people I know that think they're awesome with people and everybody hates them. Nobody likes them. And yet they're like, oh, no, I'm really good with people. Like, no, you're not, right? And so one of the things to be thinking about is if you have a business, if you have an organization, is how can you help your employees? How can you help the communication going on in your company to basically to try and make things go along a lot easier, right? If you have people that think that they're good with communication when they really are really bad at it, by coming up with some kind of text analytics services, you may be able to show them where they may be having issues. Again, imagine with Slack. So a lot of people use Slack nowadays, basically instant message online. What if you could have a positivity score on your Slack messages? So a lot of people get pissed off on email, right? Again, especially in social media. When you start tip-tapping away and you communicate, something gets ripped out of the whole communication process, and it's really easy for people to get pissed off. It's a lot better nowadays. People have gotten used to it. But if you go back 10 years ago, oh my golly, it was amazing how quickly a little issue could escalate to Armageddon simply because somebody left the cap locks on, right? So one of the things to be thinking about with communication within your company, what if when they were on Slack or they were doing email, what if before they hit the send button, that they actually got a positivity score on the message that they were about to that they were about to send? Not telling them they can't do it. This isn't like a blacklist or a deny list or whatever else. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about some kind of filter. Just something that the computer could say, hey, do you realize that this is aggressive? The communication that you are about to send, you may not realize this, but it is an aggressive communication. Are you sure you want to send it? Again, if you had like a positivity score and basically it gave a red. So you're trying to talk to somebody with email or text, but the way that you say it comes off aggressive. So if you say something aggressive, most likely there's going to be an escalation event where they're going to be aggressive, and they're going to be aggressive, and they're going to be aggressive, and everybody is going to think that they're communicating just wonderfully, and it's the other person's problem. What if you had some kind of system just to say, hey, do you realize what you're about to send is aggressive? It doesn't have a lot of positivity. Do you want to go and tweak that a little bit? Think about how much crap you could not have in the office environment simply by a little thing like that. So that's why, again, with this whole thing with text analytics, basically communication analytics, how can we help everybody just to understand communication a little bit better? Along with this there's a company called Nextiva. So Nextiva, they basically offer software as a service, telephone system, entire telephone systems, auto attendants, hunt groups, call groups, anything that you could want out of a telephone system, they offer it as a software as a service implementation. One of the things I went to, they had a conference years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. I went there, and one of the things that they were bringing out at that time, so it's been around for a while now, is they actually have what they call semantic analysis, and it's built in to their Nextiva solutions. So what here is you have these interactions, and you have this text, and then beside it, you have green or yellow or red, and basically this is trying to show the feeling of the person that's sending the particular text, right? So if Jane Smith here, that was fast, I got it and logged in, I really appreciate your help, thank you. That's green, that's green. Okay, that's a good communication. Down here, Jane Smith is orange, please help, I need to make a change in my account ASAP and my password won't work. Right? So basically their semantic analysis realizes that this is a problem, and it allows a call center agent, it allows some customer service representative to much more easily look through all of this communication and see where there might be issues. The other nice thing here is, again, with this type of thing, if you have it built into something like Nextiva, if you have managers monitoring the communication between customer service representatives and customers, they may see where communication is going off the rails, and what if if instead of the customer asking to talk to a manager, what if a manager proactively realizes that there is an issue, things are going off the rails? Hi, this is, whoever's manager. I realize maybe this isn't going as well as it should. Let's reset and let's try to make you happy as a customer, right? This is one of the things you can do with text analytics, and you can actually, with Azure's text analytics, you can build your own systems to do this type of thing. The important thing to understand with this technology is it's not perfect yet. So again, whenever I show anything, especially with computer speech or computer vision, a lot of the new people like to laugh. It doesn't work perfectly. No, it doesn't. But it's amazing how quickly this stuff goes from not working very well to being amazing. Again, I remember the first iPhone. The first iPhone was garbage. I know you're not supposed to say that as a tech person. It was so bad. I had my little Motorola Q, and other people had their iPhones, and I was like, I will keep my Motorola Q. I now have an iPhone. To be clear, I now have an iPhone. But this has almost nothing to do with the original iPhone, right? Again, over a decade, it's amazing how fast iPhones have come, and iPhones are a whole bunch of different components in here. So when we talk about things like text analytics, is it again with the positivity scores, with some of this analytics, is it perfect yet? No, absolutely not. But give it a year, give it 2 years, have a whole bunch of people hammering the hell out of their systems, have their systems learning, better what information is relevant, and I can imagine in 2 to 5 years that this type of system will be absolutely awesome. So it's kind of one of those things that you may be thinking about, build something for today based off of where this will be. When we talk about Azure Text Analytics, this is serverless architecture. So when we talk about with serverless architecture, basically this is just simply an API call. A lot of the scripts and things that I'll show you today are something like 30 lines of code. And the reason that they're 30 lines of code is basically you say, take this text, send this text up to their server. Their server has millions of lines of code or whatever to figure out what the hell's going on, and then it sends you back information in what's called the JSON format. Basically, it's a data format, a JavaScript data format, right? And so with the serverless architecture, what's really nice here is all you need is essentially your API key. You need your endpoint, basically where you're trying to talk to on the internet. You send up your information, they send back the results, and so really, most of what you're doing is simply creating statements on what to do with those results. And so that's why serverless architecture is really cool. You are not spinning up a server, you're not using a virtual server, anything like that. This is an API call, just like you would make an API call to an email service or to a storage service or something like that. When you go in and you're dealing with Azure, text analytics is one of like the hundreds of different services that are available. So if you do want to go in and set this up, it is literally called text analytics. So go search for text analytics, put it into your resource group, and then you should be able to start playing around with this. There isn't really any other configuration. Basically, you need to set up the text analytics within Azure services, and then you need your API key, and then you need your endpoint, and then you just take the code and run. One of the big things to understand when you're dealing with text is that there are going to be different results based on punctuation. So basically, Azure is looking at the sentence and then it's processing the sentence. One of the weird things in English, the English language, is we have commas. Commas allow us to put two different concepts into, or lines of thought, I suppose, into one sentence. So one of the issues you run into is that if you put a sentence in with a comma in the middle, let's say it's like the service was really good, but the food was bad, you may actually get a high positivity score there for a restaurant. Well, the person was really positive about the service, yeah, but they hated the food. It's a restaurant. Who cares, right? And so one of the things to be thinking about is I put in with my little Python scripts a little replace function. So it goes through and whenever it has sentences, anywhere it sees a comma, it replaces that with a period, and then that gives a little bit better results. Let's see if we can go over to number 2. I can just show you this real quick. Oh, come on. So if I pull up VS Code, of course, and then we go to the basics. So that's the mood app, we go to basics. Let's see here, yeah, I do opinion, right? Clear this. Okay, so this is a script. So we got, I don't know, 71 lines. I got 71 lines of code for this script, and basically what it's going to do is oops. Hello. Oh, what's going on here? I don't know. Of course it's doing this to me. Did I hit the power button? What's going on? Oh, this is the thing. When you do stuff live, you run into issues. Okay, I must have hit the power button and turned it off, because that's the kind of expert that I am. Anyways, just remember, if you're ever doing these classes, just keep powering through. They talk about that in speech class. The most important thing is that you just don't stop talking. As long as you keep talking, you're going to be okay. Supposedly. Supposedly, that's what they say. I don't know. Anyways, I don't do cuts. I don't do cuts in these videos. I want you to see how painful this stuff can really be. And why the hell is this doing this? This isn't good. Can I go back to the first one? Uh-oh. Just not working at all? Okay, that's working. Well, let me do two. Come on. Ah, there we go. Troubleshooting on the fly. That's why I'm a real technology professional. But again, if you're going to do these classes, this is the kind of crap that you're going to have to deal with. Anyway, so basically what... okay, let's reset for a second. Sorry, we had some bigger technical issues going on, so I actually had to chop out a little bit. I try not to do that with these videos, but sometimes it's got to happen. Anyways, let's go and let's take a look at this particular script. So we're doing the sentiment.python script, and so what we have here is the food was fair, comma, but the service was not bad. So if I go and I actually process this now, we're going to get a sentiment analysis, and we are going to get a 0.97. So basically, what it's saying here is that overall, this was a positive review, which seems a little rude, right? A little weird, right? The food was fair, but the service was not bad. That's pretty middling. But when it reads that entire sentence, it comes out with a 0.97 positivity rating, which means it's really, really, really good, which is kind of weird. If we go through here, though, and we simply change that to a period, let me clear this out. Let's run it again. Oh, and then what we can see here is, once it finishes running, is that it changes the positivity score, right? So the food was fair. We now get a 0.81 for the positivity score, but the service was not bad. You then get a 0.95 for the positivity score there. So I think that gives you a little bit better result, right? Before you had was a 0.97, which was really, really, really high. This one is, significantly less. The food was fair. It was fair. 0.81 on the positivity. Service was not bad, so it's not bad, so it's a 0.95. So simply by changing the punctuation marks, with the phrases that you're going to be analyzing, you can get different results. And so that's one of the things to be thinking about when you're going to be using these services. And I don't know, is it a problem? Is it an issue? It's just how it is, as they say. Just how it is. Come on, you're killing me here. Killing me today. All I want to do is I just want to get this class done so I can move everything to the new office. Anyways, real world of computers. The other thing to be thinking about when you're doing things like text transformation, or when you're moving text into different data sources so it can be viewed by different scripting languages. So one of the scripts that I have Python on one side and I have PHP on the other, and so Python basically has to dump the text into a file, and then PHP has to pull up that text and do something with it. One of the things is I needed to find a good delimiter for basically separating values in those text files. So you may have heard of comma separated values. You use a comma as a delimiter, so you can have like name, age, grade, whatever else. Instead of having a full database, you can simply separate that by commas. Right? That's a delimiter. So commas are a delimiter, periods, there's all kinds of tabs can be delimiters. There's all kinds of delimiters that you can use out there when you're going to be storing values into a text file. The issue that you're going to be dealing with a project like this is that you're dealing with sentences. And so sentences use all kinds of punctuation within the sentences, right? A sentence can have a period, it can have a comma, it can have a colon, it can have a semicolon, a lot of delimiters that you might normally use for saving and dealing with data in a text file. You may start running into really random issues if you use those delimiters, for this type of project. One of the things that I found is a pipe. So pipe's just that big straight up and down, kind of like an L but bigger than an L. If you use a pipe, that's not ever used in normal English language, and so that was a good delimiter for me to use on this particular project. And so this is one of those things you need to be thinking about when you're going to be dealing with the code. When you look at the coding languages, this is one of the only products that I've seen from Azure where all the languages are dealt with pretty equally. So a lot of times if you're using Azure Cognitive Services, C# will be able to do everything, and then every other language will be able to do subsets of whatever is being offered. With this, whether it's sentiment analysis, entity recognition, keys, phrase extraction, language detection, whatever else, you can use C#, you can use Python, Node, Go, or Ruby. And don't hold me to it, but as far as I've been able to tell, all of those languages are equal partners within the text analysis world. So that's something there. Let's see, if we go over, we start taking a look at the different types of things that you can do. The project that I just showed you, the little code that I just showed you, is something called sentiment analysis. So basically just trying to get something like the positivity score or an idea of how somebody feels about certain things. So I had the best day of my life, period. I wish you were there with me. So the document sentiment here is positive. The overall score is +1, and then it breaks it down per sentence. Again, sentence, remember those periods right there, right? Sentence 1, I had the best day of my life, positive, with a positive score of 1. Very good. Sentence 2, I wish you were there with me. Sentence 2 has a score of neutral. Positive is 0.21, neutral is 0.77, and negative is 0.02. So they're going to give you these values. So you get a positive value, a neutral value, and a negative value. They all add up to 1. So basically, if you add all those together, you get to 1. Which value you decide to trigger your scripts or whatever on is basically up to you. For the projects that I've showed you or that I will show you, basically I'm just triggering off the positivity score. I just want to know, again, the more or less positive it is. I don't really care how neutral or whatever it is. So that's one of the things that you can do here is just basic sentiment analysis. Then you get opinion mining. Now what opinion mining is, what's pretty cool, is it tries to find the adjectives for the particular words, right? So, the food and the service were unacceptable, but the concierge were nice. Notice there's a little comma in there. That's one whole sentence. If you put a period, you'll get some different results. But anyways, so what it shows here is the overall score is a 0.84 on the positivity. Which again is kind of weird. So basically it'd say, this guy's pretty positive. This guy's pretty positive about this restaurant. The food and service were unacceptable, but the concierge was nice. Again, how Azure is processing this. Yeah, it's not too bad. Anyways, right? Again, this is one thing. You do not take what Azure is giving you for fact. Make sure you're getting the types of results that are actually valuable for you. But anyways, with this, what's kind of cool here is they give you the scores, right? 0.84, negative 0.16, but then it starts showing you the adjectives for the nouns, right? The food was unacceptable, right? So food is unacceptable. Service, right, was unacceptable. Concierge was nice. So this could be a useful thing for you as a decision maker if you're going through and you're parsing like Yelp reviews, you're scraping Yelp reviews, if you can start understanding what people like and what people dislike. The food was great, the server was bad, right? If you can start getting a whole bunch of that specific type of information, that's a hell of a lot easier for a decision maker to be able to make a decision based off, right? If you're just sitting there and you're looking at these long reviews, trying to figure out what you should focus on in the review and what you shouldn't focus on in the review can be very difficult, especially when you have a lot of them. If you can simply go through and you can scrape 1,000 reviews for your restaurant and you can see, okay, most of these people say the food is good, so we probably don't need to screw around with the food, but they say parking sucks, right? They might suss out something that you're not even thinking about, like, oh, I hadn't thought about the parking situation. Am I losing people because of parking? Maybe I need to figure out how to provide parking to my clientele. So this is what opinion mining can do. And basically what this does is it basically connects your adjectives to your nouns so that you can see how people are feeling. Then they have language detection. Pretty simple. Not much to say. Ce document est rédigé en français is French. This might be good for routing things like chat messages. If you have emails, if you have voicemails, so again, somebody's calling in for customer service and you're a global corporation, just a very quick way to route incoming communication to somebody that can actually understand what the incoming communication is. They have language detection there. Then they have named entity recognition. So this is pretty cool right here. So basically with named entity recognition, what it does is it looks for those nouns and then it gives you the categories and the subcategories. Right? So I had a wonderful trip to Seattle last week. It's able to pull out trip, and then it's able to say the trip is a category of event. So there is an event and there's no subcategory. Seattle is a quick category of location and a subcategory of GPE. It's just like geopolitical location thing. And then last week, that is a date time, and that is a subcategory of date range. So if you're trying to pull out information from, again, types of communication that people are leaving for you, this might be something that's useful for you. So if you go here, they have these whole entity categories, so person type, location, organization, event, product, skill, address, phone number, email, URL, IP address, date, time, and quantity. All of that can be easily pulled out. And then under those, they have different subcategories there, right? So subcategories, so geopolitical entity, structural, geographical, so that's for the location. Subcategories, medical, stock exchange, sports, cultural, natural, sports. They have a whole bunch of these little subcategories there. So again, if you're trying to get a better idea of the communication coming in, simply by having this type of little tagging mechanism, it might be very useful for you. Again, if you're thinking about this from a decision-making standpoint, if you can pull out things like last week, right? So if somebody said they had a good experience with your company or a bad experience with your company, and they say last week, well, the thing is, if I'm just sitting there looking at it, last week is very difficult for me to understand in my brain, right? But again, if we have a database system, we're correlating a lot of different information. So if I scrape from Yelp and I can see when the Yelp review was posted, then I can do the math on what last week means because it was posted this date, so last week. And then if they had a good experience or a bad experience, I can then make managerial decisions based off of what happened. Oh, they had a really bad experience. Let me see who was on duty. Let me see who was the manager. Oh, these other people had bad experiences. When they had bad experiences, this was the manager that was on duty at the time. Okay, let me go in and try to do some coaching or whatever, counseling for the manager to try to improve the situation. The other thing too is things like simply pulling out the geographical location. One of the very important things when you're a decision maker is you want to know where people are coming from, because you have to understand what geographic area that you're pulling your customers in from, right? So for me, one of the weird things is when I've done the one-on-one presentations, I've pulled in people from all the way from Raleigh and Augusta, Georgia. So 4 hours and 3 hours away, people have been willing to come and talk to me. So if I think the geographical location I'll be able to pull people from for Silicon Dojo is only Asheville, I will make certain business decisions. If I start seeing people are coming from other areas, then I may make different business decisions. Again, things like where I'm going to do the advertising spending. There was an interesting thing. I was traveling a couple of years ago in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Munising, really cool area if you've never been up there. Anyways, they get a lot of Indians. For some reason, they get a lot of Indians. It is the middle, like, it is way far away. Like, I guess you fly into Chicago, and after you fly into Chicago, it's like a 7-hour drive. So I would figure there's will be a lot of stuff between Chicago and Munising. But apparently, they get a lot of Indians that go up to Munising. One of the things to be thinking about is if you have people leaving reviews, and you start seeing that they're from geographical locations you may not have expected, maybe that's a geographical location you should be advertising to. Right? You may not think that residents of Mumbai would give a crap about Munising. But you might find, oh look, we've actually got, when we look at these reviews and we're able to pull out the location from where these reviews were given, hey, we have a lot of people coming from Mumbai, maybe we should do some Google AdWords in Mumbai. Right? That's where this kind of information becomes valuable. And again, just simply being able to pull that out makes life easier. Then we go to personally identifiable information. This will probably make a lot of folks hoo-ha's pucker. Oh no, they can grab my information that quick. Basically, with a personal identifiable information component of Azure text analysis, it can go through, and with text, it can just pull specific information and tell you what that information is, right? So the employee's social security number is this, the employee's phone number is this. That's the text that you're dumping into this particular script, and then the output is entity. This is the number that gets pulled out, category, social security number. This is the entity, this is the number. What is it? It's a phone number. So think about this for mining information that's already coming into your company, or information that your company already has. Think about that. Think about how many companies still have information in old written reports, right? Customer receipts, that type of thing. If you had some kind of scanning system where you scanned all of those old receipts, then that information, OCR, was turned into text. And then you had text analysis go through and then rip out all the relevant information. You may be able to bone up your CRM solution, your customer relationship management software, with a whole bunch of contacts that otherwise may have been lost to the history, right? People giving resumes or that type of thing. You may have old paper resumes or something like that. Being able to pull that, being able to scan through old documents, be able to pull out information. You may have a lot of valuable information that you didn't even realize that you had before, and by being able to use this personal identifiable information, you're able just to pull all of that out and then dump it into something like a database. I have an example of this. Well, I can show you the example. Let's see if this works. So the example of this, with the personal identifiable information, and so this is the PII script right here. Let me clear this out, right? So with this, basically I have this script. My name is Bob Bowman. I'm calling from this phone number. My service has been down for 3 hours. My address is this. Please call me ASAP or email me. So I just dumped this in, right? So imagine somebody's talking into a phone that gets turned into text. Then I can do the run and debug. And when this goes through, it pulls out all of that information for me. Bob Bowman is a person with a confidence score of 98. This is a phone number, confidence score of 0.8. 3 hours is a date time, an address. So again, think about, you have a routing system. There are a lot of companies out there that no longer actually provide services to the end user. They're essentially advertisement for other companies. Somebody sends in a request for work from them. They see this is from Charlotte, North Carolina, and then they automatically route it to whoever is appropriate. They got the date, time, they got the email address. All of this can be pulled out that quickly and then dumped into a database, or things can be routed. Again, this is all completely dynamic. So if I just simply go up here and I say I'm Fred Wilson, and then I run the exact same script just to show you it really is that quick, and there we go. We now have Fred Wilson. So again, this can go through and it can just rip through and process a lot of information. Anytime a value, basically a variable, can get a value, that value can then be dumped into whatever it is you want to dump it into. This is absolutely awesome. This is also why I laugh at a lot of the folks that think blockchain is going to give us privacy. There are a lot of people out there that for some reason, I have no idea, think blockchain is going to allow us to own our private information, right? So the idea is you put your information into the blockchain, and then you only give specific people permission to see certain information. What I try to explain to people is as soon as you hand that information over to somebody else in any form or fashion, that can be dumped into their database, and their database doesn't have any permission scheme now, does it? right? When we are in a world where optical character recognition can read, at any point you pull out an ID card, if a picture is taken of it, all of that information is dumped into their database. Anytime you talk with somebody on the phone, all of that information turned into text, dumped in their database. Anytime you're interacting with people with a form and they need additional information, all of that information is then dumped into their database. It's very easy for them to go through and parse what information that they actually care about, add that to basically your profile within their database system, and you just realize the whole idea of owning your privacy, post 2021 is slightly ridiculous. Even with the whole idea of using blockchain, right? So the idea is, well, what if I had a blockchain app? So there's a front end that only connects to the blockchain. So the only way that I can see the information is if I'm using this app, the only input for this app is the blockchain. But imagine in the modern world where screen capture technology exists, you can just have a company, or you can have a person using screen capture technology that whenever they pull up a record, or whenever anybody's interacting with private information, the computer automatically does a screen capture. It then does OCR, optical character recognition, on that screen capture. It then pulls out all the information it cares about, and again, dumps it into their database. So I understand why people want privacy. I am not snarking on anybody for wanting privacy. It's just, we all want things in life. We all want things. Anywho, then we have entity linking. Entity linking is actually really interesting. Basically, this can be very good for creating like a footnote application, basically a way to give your users a little bit more context for the information that they're seeing. So for this document, basically it says Microsoft was founded by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, April 4th, 1975, to develop and sell basic interpreters for Altair. During his career at Microsoft, Gates held the position. So basically it gives like this kind of Wikipedia type information here, right? What's interesting is Azure can go through, it can pull out the words that it thinks are valuable: Microsoft, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, April 4th, basic, Altair, and then what it can do is it can give you a link to the Wikipedia page for that particular information. So if you had some kind of document that popped up, maybe it was talking about things you didn't quite understand, at the bottom of it you may have like a little footnote section where it can simply give you links to Wikipedia or to other places so that you can get a better idea of what's going on. Or if you want to code this a little bit more complicated, you could actually, if this got printed out on a screen, you could actually turn all those words into specific hyperlinks. But this can be a very useful thing. I was thinking about this like with, we had a real estate person in the company, and so imagine if somebody sent an email to a real estate person and said, "Hi, I'm moving from this place in Wisconsin. I got a job at this company, and I would like to move to this particular neighborhood," right? For a real estate agent, it might be very useful for trying to create a connection or relationship with that person, just to be able to click and go, okay, so where is this in Wisconsin? Oh, okay, so this is information about Wisconsin. Okay, now I know where they're coming from. Oh, they're going to work for this company? Let me pull up. Oh, that's who that company is, right? Just be able to click, be able to get ideas of the context of the information that they're getting could be very useful for them. So that's basically just giving you hyperlinks. Supposedly you can change this to Bing. You can change this to other data sources. Not honestly quite sure how to get there, but supposedly you can do it. Key phrase extraction. This is basically just pretty useful. Essentially it just pulls out the nouns. Noun extraction. Anyways, my cat might need to see a veterinarian. When you run this through, key phrases, cat and veterinarian. Again, things to be thinking about when you're routing communication. So my dog, my little dog Peanut, the Chihuahua, she has a cardiologist. Again, this is either amazing or dystopian. I'm not really sure what to say. My poor little Chihuahua has a cardiologist. She goes in, she gets her little heart scan, the whole 9 yards. It's actually kind of cool from a technical standpoint. Brutal from a financial standpoint. But anyways, something to be thinking about. Like if you had a veterinarian and you had somebody communicating and they wanted to get an appointment for whatever their critter is. Hi, my cat needs to see the cardiologist. Simply by being able to pull out that information, you can simply have very simple if-else statements to route that communication to the most appropriate person. Oh, okay, you have a cat who needs a veterinarian, and these are our cat veterinarians. You have a dog who needs a veterinarian. These are our dog veterinarians. Oh, you have a dog that has joint issues. These are our joint issue people, right? Again, it seems very simple, but if you actually put this into a production type system, could actually save a lot of time and energy. Then we can also extract health entities. When we're extracting health entities, so with this, patient needs to take 50 milligrams of ibuprofen, basically for the medical world. Entity 50 milligrams, category dosage, entity ibuprofen, category medication. So this could be a useful thing, especially with so many people in the US right now taking so many medications. Again, whether or not one or two medications is good for you, I've heard a lot of people that were just over-medicated, and one of the big problems is side effects from multiple, right, interactions between the different medications. And so an interesting thing to be thinking about here is if you could just plug the text in, like all the medications that you're taking. So I'm taking 50 milligrams of this, X number of times a day. I'm taking 25 milligrams of this, X number of times a day, blah, blah. If you just plug that in, and then you could have a script to run, go through and simply pull out what the drug is, what the dosage is, how many times a day, pull out all of those things for all the other drugs, and then simply go through a database system and see how those drugs interact with each other. It might be very easy to find where you're having problems with the drug effects and that type of thing. And so the extract health entities could be useful if you're in the health world. So with that, I created a couple of crappy apps here just to kind of show you what's going on. I guess the first one I will show you is the footnote app. So I showed you that entity linking before. So let me show you how entity linking works when you actually have a when you're actually using it. Okay, so basically we come up here, and this is my entity linking. All right, so basically what I do is I have a script that I created. Basically I use the Python script, the example that they gave, and for the script, instead of writing out to the screen, I'm now actually writing out to an index.html, right? So with here, I have Paul Gardner Allen, basically the same information, and then underneath I create a table, Paul Allen, here's a Wikipedia address, American, if you don't know what American is, here's a Wikipedia address, Microsoft, here's a Wikipedia address, and Bill, I don't know why it has Bill Clinton. Maybe when I was pasting stuff in, oh, Bill. Bill. So I decided Bill Clinton. Anyways, so it gives that kind of footnote information. Why this is interesting, as we go here, right? So this is the text that's being dumped into that. So let's go and grab somebody else's text. So I don't know. Let's say Joe. Do we want to do Joe Biden? Is Joe Biden too political right now? Let's do Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton. People have forgotten about him. So let's pull up Bill Clinton's information. All right. So we pull up Bill Clinton just to kind of show you how this goes. We'll just go to Wikipedia, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply copy this, right? We're going to copy that. We're going to go here to the text that's being dumped in. We're going to do Control B, so that gets pasted. And then we are going to run. Hopefully there will not be any issues, so I don't look too much of a dummy. And then we're going to go here. Okay, and so we can see that this page was basically dynamically created by the Python script. William Jefferson Clinton is an American politician, blah, blah, blah. Again, I just pulled whatever was in Wikipedia. You can obviously get the values from something else. So imagine with this footnote app, imagine if you're doing blog posts. So if you're writing blog posts, especially for a technical type blog, if you could just add all these little footnotes in automatically, that might be good. Anyways, 42nd President of the United States goes to Bill Clinton. William Jefferson Clinton goes to Bill Clinton. American politician. Arkansas gives you information about Arkansas. Attorney General of Arkansas gives you information about the Arkansas Attorney General. The Democratic Party gives you information about the Democratic Party. A New Democrat gives you information about the New Democrats. The Third Way gives you information about the Third Way. And Hillary Clinton gives you information about the Hillary Clinton. Right? So again, if you were doing some kind of blog system, some kind of publishing system, this might be an easy way just to kind of have like an automatic footnote system. So if people don't understand what's being talked about, they could just click on one of those footnotes to see. Again, like in the technical world, what an Altair is. Who was Xerox? Who was Kodak, right? Who was, Larry Ellison. I guess Larry Ellison is still around, right? But again, there's important names in the technical world. You may be talking about Larry Ellison. People may not know who Larry Ellison is. People may not understand how important Oracle is. Simply by having some kind of little automatic footnotes there, this could be a useful thing. Then the other script that I showed you is that sentence app script. So this is a sentence app script. And so basically here, I have a couple of things going on. So let me start this. So we start the speech recognition. So I have this speech recognition. So what's happening here is this is using Azure's speech services to turn my speech into text. There you go. So we see the speech has now been turned into text. And then what I do is I'm using the syntax services to then read. So basically the speech goes into a file for the text. The syntax then reads the file of the text, and then it dumps it into a different file that's formatted for PHP, so that PHP then can grab the positivity value that's been recorded, and it can grab the text itself, and then the background color changes based off of whatever it thinks the positivity score is. Again, so this is kind of like an automatic system to give you an idea of sentence by sentence how communication is going. So that uses a couple of different things. So we have the speech service that we're using, a Python script, dumps the value into a text file. We have the syntax service that's using a Python script, grabs from that text file, processes, and then dumps it into another text file. We use a pipe delimiter. So basically it gives a point value, delimiter, and then the words that were analyzed. Then we have the PHP script. The PHP script is set to auto refresh every 5 seconds. Every time it refreshes, it rewrites all of this. And basically then what it does is it grabs that positivity value. Based on that positivity value, it sets the background color, and then it prints out analyzed text, the text that was analyzed, the emotional score, whatever the score was, and then it gives you the background color. So that's how this particular app works. I then have a different app that we're going to see whether or not that's going to work. Let's see here, kill that, kill that. There we go, kill it. Hey, computer, close.
Goodbye.
There we go.
Thanks for playing.
There we go. We killed that particular script. So then I have another thing over here, and this is for an overall kind of a mood ring app. So let me, oops. Uh-oh, is that actually running? What's going on? Oh, I need to stop doing this stuff live. What's going on with this thing? Come on. Kill, die. That's interesting. I think that kind of locked up. Let's terminate that. Let's do shell, let's do new tab. Okay, so let's do where we're at. Okay, so then we do, alright, so we do the speech recognition here, so say something. Okay, so now this is going to start processing my speech, just like the other script was processing my speech. And then what happens here is basically everything gets dumped into one file, so the entire file is analyzed. We're going to start running the syntax thing here. And so basically you get a mood ring for the entire conversation, right? So every time I say something, that basically gets turned into text, that gets dumped into a file that keeps getting appended to, keeps getting added to. And then what happens is the syntax script then reads the entire file and tries to give you an overall idea of how well the conversation is going. Come on. Killing me here. And, yeah, okay, that's working. Yeah, okay, that's working. Okay, there we go. Oh, it's working. Again, all of this, do realize I coded all these little projects in about an hour, so they're a little bit slow. They're a little bit quirky, right? So analyze text. Here's all the text that has been analyzed, and then the overall emotional score is a 0.23, so that gives us a slightly frowny face. Now, if I talk about how happy I am, I'm so amazingly happy. Happy. I am so happy. I am excited to be here. I love my view. Oh, it's hard to even say that. I don't know. I love my chihuahua. I love my wife. I'm excited about the future when I go into the new office. Hopefully this will process. There we go. I'm happy, blah, blah, blah. And so the overall tone of the conversation is now happy. We now have green. We now have a green smiley face. So again, that's the kind of thing to be thinking about when you're kind of using these kind of like emotional things, like trying to figure out the positivity score. Do you want it positivity sentence by sentence, or do you want an overall kind of how is the entire conversation going, right? You may have a few red sentences that may make it look bad, but if you have enough green sentences, maybe that'll make up for it, and the conversation isn't necessarily going as bad as you think it does. So this is kind of like my little mood ring app here. And again, it just kind of gives you an idea of what this type of technology can do. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Don't judge it based off of my coding skills. You can complain about Microsoft for many things, but don't blame them for my coding skills. So with a footnote app, basically how it works is we have Azure Speech Services, turns the speech, what I'm talking to. Anyways, that's wrong too. I'm just not doing good today. Anyways, let's just go to the end. Let's do the pricing so I can go to my new office space. When you're looking at the pricing of all this stuff, the price is actually really good. So again, whenever you think about pricing, you have to think about what are you actually being charged for. So a text record corresponds to the number of 1,000 character units. So 1,000 characters get sent, and that's considered a text record. 5,000 text records are free per month, so that's a hell of a lot of text. And then for sentiment analysis, when you actually start paying for it, it's $1 per 1,000 text records. So that's pretty good. 1,000 characters, 1,000 text records equals $1. So I think that's a pretty good price point. The only way you'd run into trouble is if you're using this in some massive production system. Then the bills might actually add up, but otherwise it's pretty inexpensive. The only place this gets weird. Again, I would argue this is the metaphor for the American healthcare system right here. So notice, $1 per 1,000 text records for normal stuff. Text analytics for health. So everything that we saw is really cool, but is the entity recognition and the health services really that much cooler? Anyways, $100 per 1,000 text records. It is 100x more expensive to use basically the same service to do it for health versus doing it for everything else. $1 per 1,000 normally goes up to $100 per 1,000 for health. And that is the American healthcare system. There may be some reasons why this should be a little bit more expensive. One of the things that one of the students brought up is there is specific terminology in the healthcare industry. There are specific drugs. There are a lot more like specific words that are only relevant in the healthcare industry. Yeah, I mean, I guess. That's a lot more expensive though. So anyways, that's the end of the class for using Azure's text analytics. This class went a bit wonky. This is like the 12th one of these classes that I've done. This is the first time I think I've actually had to put a jump cut in any of them. Anyways, sometimes there are technical problems. Don't take my failings, don't take them to be against Microsoft. What I want to show you here is how you can use these types of things to implement particular solutions within your environment. Again, if you can give your employees, if you can give your customers, ways to make communication easier, that's going to make everybody happier all the way around. Again, as a business owner, it's important for you to be thinking about how you can make the customers happier so that they want to keep coming back to your business. You want to figure out ways to make systems more efficient so that you're not wasting so many man hours just to do simple things. Again, filling out paperwork for the 1,000th time is ridiculous no matter who does it, right? And then other things to be thinking about is, again, in all seriousness, as a business owner, you do need to be thinking about the mental well-being of your employees and just thinking about how in the modern world can you have a dashboard. In the computer world, right, if I have servers, if I have networking equipment, that type of thing, I have SNMP. So there's something called Simple Network Management Protocol, and whether you use that or some other service, it's just absolutely amazing, right? You can see on one dashboard, if you have 1,000 servers, you can see the CPU temperature on 1,000 servers. You can see the hard drive, capacity, and using SMART, something called SMART shows you the actual health of the hard drive. You can see, things about the hard drive. You can see utilization of RAM. You can see power supplies. You can see so many amazing things. Simply from one dashboard, and that makes life as an IT person a hell of a lot easier, right? If you can see that one of your servers out of the 1,000 is running 20 degrees hotter than every other server, it's very simple to go, oh, I should probably pull that out of production. I should probably open it up and see what the hell's going on. You crack it open and you find out the CPU fan failed or something got gunked up. It's very easy to solve. It's very easy to solve before there's a major problem. If, on the other hand, that server starts overheating and it's part of a cluster that's replicating data, and then all of a sudden it starts failing data replication, all of a sudden everything goes to hell, right? It's bad. It's easier to have the warning signs before there's a big problem. The same thing is true with employees, right? If an employees are going to have high days and they're going to have low days. That's normal, right? But if you have an employee and they start coming in, basically almost that same CPU thing, like they come in and day after day they are objectively less happy than they have been while they've been working for your company, simply coming in and saying, hey, I'm just wondering if there's anything going on. We noticed that you might not be, as content or whatever as you have been. Is there any issues? And they say, look, my dog died, my mother died, whatever else. If somebody has cancer, simply going in, taking them out of service for 2 or 3 days or a week, allowing them to process the problem, allowing them to fix their own issues. I'm not telling you to be their therapist, allowing them to be able to deal with whatever issues they have going on, and then they can come back in and they're part of the cluster and everything's working well. Versus you keep beating on them like you normally beat on them, their motivation keeps dropping because maybe their kids are on drugs. They found out their kids are on drugs. They don't know how they're going to deal with it. Stress is going up and up and up. Then they're failing at work. Because they're failing at work, you as a boss, you need to get them back. You're right, everything goes to hell. By simply having some of this kind of analysis going on, we can try to find problems before they get to the place where the boss goes, oh my golly, I did understand how bad things were for you, you're fired. Because that's a real option. That really happens. I know, because I did it. Anyways, those are some of the things to be thinking about with text analysis. This was pretty good. I enjoyed doing this class. Do remember these classes in Silicon Dojo is free to the end user. That does not mean it's actually free. We are supported by our kind crowdfunders out there. So if you do want to support what I'm doing here at Silicon Dojo, you want to support these classes, please think about clicking on one of the crowdfunding links. We're currently using DonorBox and throw a couple of dollars in there. Otherwise, we do classes here in Asheville, North Carolina. Again, we are expanding, so we're actually going to start doing those more in-person, hands-on type things. We would love to see you here. So, as always, I enjoyed teaching this class. Look forward to seeing you again, and more importantly, I hope to see you here in Asheville, North Carolina.